and just kind of get in there in the seam and seal it up. It's not enough just to stick it on there. You have to close the seam in order for it to become one with the other piece of clay. Okay, so I think that's where I want them to be. I'm happy with it. It looks like a hand. It also kind of looks like a heart. I might spend some time back here adding a little bit more clay because this is kind of flat right there, and I wanted to give it knuckles and make it kind of look like a hand. So you might ask yourself, well, what do I do now? I have arteries on there. I have the body of the hand built. Am I done? No, you're totally not done. You have a lot more work to do here. But this is kind of the fun part. This is where we get to be creative and really start adding the thematic elements to our piece. So the first thing I want to think about is, am I really done with the form? What else do I want to add? I obviously have to add the ring, but that's kind of a detail I can add later, and I might want to carve on it a little bit before I even add that. So, you know, do I want some of these veins? Do I want to create a texture? Do I want some of these chambers to be in my heart? Do I want to add to it? And the answer is yes. I love these little ventricles that are open right here. I think they're kind of fun. They remind me of maybe a musical instrument. I also really love this artery that sort of reaches and drapes over the heart. That's neat too. So think about that a little bit. This is one side of the heart and that's the other. So if I were looking at this and trying to imagine that it was a hand, I think this would be the back of the heart and the back of the hand, like that. So I might want to think about, well, maybe the middle finger is the one that arches over like that. That might be kind of a fun change that I could make to it. And of course, you know, your finger has to be bendable still, but maybe I add a chamber here. So if I do that, how do I do that? How do I add to this? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is take some more clay out, and I'm going to roll a wet slab. I want to make sure. I feel like I'm recording. Yeah. Okay. And I'm not going to roll out too much because I don't want to waste it. I'm just going to roll out what I need today. This is used clay, so I'm going to do a little bit of wedging. And because it's such a small piece of clay, I'm just going to wedge by squeezing it and dropping it on the table. Remember, wedging, the purpose of wedging is to really compress the clay particles so that they don't crack when you try to manipulate your clay. Make a pancake. Take my rolling pin, roll once, and then I move it because it's going to stick if I roll it too many times in one spot. Flip it over, and I'm just creating kind of a thin slab of clay. Okay. And then I decided I wanted to put a chamber on the back of the hand here. So I'm going to very gently prop that there. And we're going to look at our heart here. And I'm going to hold this over and I'm going to kind of decide, I think I want it to look like that. So it almost is going to look sort of like a growth. Okay, so now I need to kind of figure out how big that's going to be. And then I'll do a tracing here of where I need to kind of cut it off. And then I'll slice that. Just create a, I'm going to save this because I could use it for something else. And then I'm going to mold it a little bit and figure out how I'm going to attach this. I think I'm going to do another slab here too. So the reason we don't just stick a big old thick piece of clay on there, remember we're trying to keep any wall width under 1/2 inch. So I can't add this big chamber here with a thick piece of clay. I have to actually create a pocket here. Okay, so now I'm going to take my scoring tool, and wherever that slab is touching, I'm going to score. crisscross, crosshatch. Be careful about putting pressure, too much pressure on this finger on the table, because it could crack. Same thing on the slab. A little bit of water, just a fingertip of water. Try to hold this close to the camera here. And then I'm just going to compress and add that. And after I attach it to the top part here, I can stick my finger in this space and kind of sculpt it out a little bit. I can also carve away at it if it's too much clay. And then reminding you too, once you put a pocket of air anywhere on your sculpture, you have to poke a hole in it or it will explode. So once I'm carving into this, I'll probably just put a bunch of like needle holes in it. Okay, now I'm getting some neat dimension to my heart here. Still not carving anything into it. I'm still working on the form, still on stage 1, building it up. I love this crease here. This is such a strange, it almost looks like it's tied off there and it's being restricted. So I'm going to add another slab there. And eventually I'll probably maybe put a coil in that crease so that it really looks like a crease. Or I could kind of attach this like that and kind of drop it down like that. That's kind of neat. So I'm going to score the inside. Counter pressure. If I'm pushing on a thin wall, I'm going to put my hand on the other side so I don't stretch it too much. Score up the inside of this. And then I also have to score down here. And you can be sort of proactive about it before you stick the slab on there. Just poke a hole there. That's all you need, is a tiny little poke. That's going up under there, and then this side is going to touch this side. It's kind of like a 3D quilt. I'm sort of piecing it together. And like I said, this is, in my opinion, this is the fun part, right? Because now we're starting to really add our theme to our heart. And before I completely close it off, I want to either use a tool or my hands and really sculpt the inside to get the form that I'm looking for. I can even seal that seam on the inside with the tool. And then you want to sculpt this out too, because the second you close it and you push on this, it's going to collapse. So you want to get it to where you want it before you close it. Okay, and then I'm just going to very gently attach. I'm going to hold that closer to the camera. And now I'm just attaching this slab. And I might do a little paddle sculpting with it, just to get it the right form. I might just use my hand instead of a piece of wood because I need to be gentle. So now you can see that it's a lot more three-dimensional than it was, and then I could kind of sculpt this into a heart. Another thing I'm noticing from this photo is that there's a weird kind of like crumbly texture to it. Kind of like cottage cheese or something. So I thought, well, how am I going to get that texture? Now would be the time that I'd want to get that texture. So dig around in the things that you collected. I like this flower holder, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to just start kind of creating a dotted texture to the surface of my heart. You can kind of see here what it's doing. I'm going to go in and carve later, and I can, go back and forth. I can carve and I can add texture, and I can carve And this is the fun part, right? Because we're going to be adding glaze to this texture, and it's going to pull and break and do lots of interesting things inside the texture. Even the bottom, pay attention to every surface. Okay, so I've added that. Now you might be asking yourself, well, what if I want to add those tiny little ventricles that are coming up? Let's do a couple of those. That's pretty simple. I just want to take a little bit of wet clay. And I might make another tube, but they're so tiny that I might just sculpt it without rolling out a coil. So I'm going to use this tiny needle tool, and you can use maybe a pencil or something. And I'm just going to kind of sculpt it around that. Maybe I'll roll it out a little bit. But I don't want it to get too big. And then I love the way it just kind of looks sort of cut off there. So I might just try to do a nice slice and then reshape it. And as this dries a bit and you get into the leather hard state of your piece, you're going to be doing a lot of carving and smoothing and texturizing with your tools. And you can really make it look a lot different than it does now. You can't really refine clay when it's this wet. It's just too sticky. So we really, when the clay is this wet, you just deal with form. Okay, and then I'm going to spread out this base because I'm going to attach it. So let's figure out where do I want those. I'm going to put it there, score it. And this is where you can get into some fun negative space. Like after I attach it, I might want to open up a hole here. Like I could even do it now. I'm going to use this tool and I'm going to just create an opening there. Kind of see. And then I'm going to use a little bit of water. And this is where you want to use your tools instead of your finger. When you're getting into a smaller attachment, you want to use your tools because they're more delicate than your fingertips. Okay, and then maybe I go in with that texturizer and I make sure that that seam doesn't look like I just attached it. Okay, and if you wanted to add some veins in there, you could roll out tiny little coils. So get a small piece of clay. It has a dry piece in it. And you even your tiny little veins you have to attach well. You can't just stick them on there and expect them to stay. They'll pop right off. So I'm rolling a skinny little coil here. And I can use the whole thing in different ways. This is something you might not want to do until you've added all the clay you want to add to your piece and texture and stuff. But I'm showing you now just in case you're there. So I see that I'm kind of making this up. I'm sort of taking elements that I like and I'm sort of putting them in weird places, but it doesn't have to, like I said, it doesn't have to be completely anatomical. So I'm using my finger to create this crease. And I can do that because there's hollow space in there. I just added those slabs. Okay, and then I'm going to take my scoring tool and I'm going to score that crease. And then I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to score my tiny little coil here. These are the steps we can't skip. if you skip the scoring and the water step, you'll regret it in the end because it'll just come right off your piece when it's dry. A little bit of water. I'll take my little baby coil here and add it in there. These textural elements to your piece are really going to make it much more detailed and interesting to look at and more refined. Alright, and then I do have to attach, but I don't want to lose that vein looking line, so I'm just going to go in on the edge and I'm going to sort of attach just the edge. And again, after this gets leather hard, I can go in and scrape and carve and do more detail. I'm just adding the clay right now. I will take a detailed photo of what I just did and post it so that you guys can see better. These webcams are great for action stuff, but the image quality isn't so great on them. So even if I hold it up, it has trouble focusing, I think. Okay, so details, we're still adding clay. We're not carving, we're not smoothing, we're not refining, we're adding clay. Okay, so it's starting to look really interesting and cool and creepy, and yep,